say thank you to all of you, to Mary, to both Marys and everyone hosting. And it's been delightful to have all of you along with us these sessions, these nice little 1 hour self-compassion help technique. I hope it's been helpful. And again, I'm only pausing for now. It looks like we're going to do some courses in the future. So that'll be really sweet to be back with you. Thanks for Mary for helping me setting all that up and asking. So again, let's bring ourselves into the space. Just being present with your space. And find a comfortable posture for your body. The nicest part is really to have the extension of the spine. As best as you can. What happens sometimes when we're lying down is you tend to drift off, go to sleep. So again, if it's helpful, you can lightly close your eyes. The head can be slightly tipped forward, not too far down. The lips are lightly together. The teeth are slightly apart, with the tongue curled to touch the upper palate in the mouth behind the front teeth. Let's begin by allowing ourselves relaxation. Just begin to deepen your respiration. And allow that spaciousness of the inhalation to open up the body and open up any tense areas. Allow the exhalation to release any tension. And just considering so many beings around this planet right now struggling. As best as you can, really think about these beings, some of whom you know personally, many we don't know. Breathe in for a moment the good fortune that you have yourself. Good conditions of your life, good qualities. But just considering all these other beings that maybe don't have those situations, those positive situations. We can be here for them right now. We can direct our energy, the direction of our mind and our awareness towards layering on some positive experiences in our own mind, planting seeds of positive experiences, what we might label virtue in our mind, those seeds ripening in the future, in future moments, in something positive for us, happiness for us. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to roll that into our practice, to roll that into a rich, consistent practice, to reach that state of full awakening, to become Buddha. Okay? Why do we want to do that? Because then we can help all these beings, all these suffering beings, perfectly, unlimitedly. Just breathe that in for a moment. And if you have some interest in connecting your mind with that, or in accomplishing that motivation, that purpose, feel free to include that in your motivation. Just take a moment to set that motivation for our time together and all the activities of the rest of your day. So, in continuing on with some self-compassionate imagery right now in this meditation, sometimes we use self-compassionate imagery that can be helpful for you. So let's explore. The first task here with this exercise is to create an image of a safe place for you. Can be imaginary or real. Okay? Any place that makes you feel peaceful, calm, and relaxed. Peaceful, calm, and relaxed. As best as you can, bring it to mind. Can you see it in your mind? And maybe you actually imagine you're there. Is it a white sandy beach? A forest glade with deer grazing nearby? Your grandmother's kitchen? Napping near a warm fire, a fireplace? As best as you can, whatever it is for you. Try to really imagine this place in your mind's eye. Try to put yourself in that place as best as you can. Notice the colors around you. Is it dim or is it bright? What are the sounds or smells that come up? And if you ever feel anxious, you ever feel insecure in your life, even on any of your self-compassion journeys, let's say, as well, can bring up this image in your mind, this safe place to calm you, to soothe you. So here's the next thing to think about. Create an image of an ideally caring and compassionate figure, someone who embodies wisdom, compassion, strength, warmth, non-judgmental acceptance. Could be somebody you know personally, could be a great leader, spiritual leader in the world, or someone who existed before that inspires you like that. Could be a favorite aunt, a favorite teacher. For some, it could be a beloved pet, or just an imaginary fantasy being. It could even be an image like a radiant light. And try to see this image as vividly as possible, using as many of your sense faculties as possible. Just try your best. And if you're suffering in any way right now, mental or physical, struggling, think about the type of wise, caring things this idealized source of compassion would say to comfort you. How would his, her, or their voice sound? What feelings are conveyed in their tone? And if you're feeling a bit numb or spaced out or shut down, just let yourself bask in this compassionate presence of this ideal image, just allowing yourself to be there. And now release your compassionate image. Just imagine them dissolving back into the space. Just sitting quietly in your own body. Bring yourself back to where you are in your space and savor any comfort and ease you generated in your body and mind. And just know, whenever you want to generate compassion for yourself, you could return to this image as a springboard, the space and the being, and allow yourself to receive the gift of kindness. Please relax. There's a few more things I want to add as self-compassion ideas, techniques, things that could be helpful. And I'm not sure if I read this quote last time from Einstein. It's a nice quote. A human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, the whole being the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Sometimes I think Einstein had some sort of enlightened capacity. If you read any of his works, he seemed to know about emptiness, even though he didn't label it as such. And just this idea of notice how we separate ourselves, right? And with the Buddhist concept of self-grasping and self-cherishing, so because we misknow reality, because we have a misunderstanding of reality, then I have a concretely existing I arise, sense of myself arises, okay? Then I grasp onto that. That's self-grasping. Me, my car, my kid, my cup, whatever it is, that sense, holding on, attaching to it as a solidly separate existing thing. Doesn't exist like that at all. Mistake. Okay. Why is that mistake in our mind? Some people ask me. Why is that our reality, that everybody sees things with that misknowing? K-N-O-W, right? Misunderstanding. Simply because there's a previous moment of that in the consciousness, in the mind. And there's no beginning to the mind. So the fundamental ignorance, the misknowing has been there since beginningless mind, they say. How do you dismantle it? Right? Study emptiness, read about emptiness, go to teachings on emptiness, gain a firm intellectual understanding about emptiness, meditate well on emptiness, learn how to meditate on emptiness, and then have a direct perception of emptiness. will cut that self-grasping. Then we have self-cherishing. So because I've now separated myself, I'm separate from you, I need these things for me, you're interfering with that. I'll help you, but to the limits I can help you. And because I realize I'm limited and all that. And so self-cherishing arises. I don't have any attainment of bodhicitta, the enlightened attitude, very much focused on others, separate again, and then self-cherishing. So those are these two big obstacles in Buddhism. So I really like with Einstein, how he calls it an optical delusion. I love that, an optical delusion. Everything we see, an optical delusion of consciousness, he says. It's so perfect, that wording. Just so perfect, an optical delusion of consciousness. And it's a prison for us, he says. Think about the prison. So I would just finish this seminar, leading this 3-month seminar for this group in this institute in Israel. And at the very end, we got into some really pithy things. There was a 3-day retreat at the end, challenging on Zoom, but they were great. They were really kind of going for it, really trying. And at the end, we got into a thing, and somebody was saying, well, how much do you balance your practice? They wanted practical. What do we do? We're not going to be a monk or nun, and how do we do this? And and that's fine. You can be a great lay practitioner. Many of you are, I'm sure. So they said, one woman said, I'm not going to realize emptiness in this life. How am I going to get this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to find a guru? What am I going to do? And they really, like, kind of urgently, some of them, I could see the sincerity. They really wanted, and I said, it's a matter of reorchestrating priorities, right? We all have certain things we do every day, and some of them are time wasters, right? Right? I mean, one example I give is, so I'm a crossword lover. I don't know if there's any crossword people out there. From a young age, my mom and I used to do crosswords, the ones in the newspaper. Okay? So now I'm down to, like, I'll admit this, 2 crosswords a week. Okay? The Sunday paper has 2 really great crosswords, the New York Times and another one. And I do those every week. Okay. Now, if I want to add up all the crosswords I've done, they don't take me that long, but you're sitting there for a bit. The Sunday ones, they're bigger, right? It's a lot of time I've probably wasted doing crosswords. Okay? It's a choice I've made. So when you think about your priorities and your choices, and I don't do them, there's sometimes, when I'm traveling, I never do them, never think about it. Okay. But now that I've been home with the pandemic, becomes this ritual. And I look at that. So I'm about to do retreat tomorrow. All that's going to stop. Not going to do that anymore. For what, definitely reducing. So certain things you can always push the reset button and reestablish those priorities. Think about it. Push that reset button. It's so helpful. That's why retreat's really helpful. To do some private retreat during the year at some point, whether it's a day, a weekend you start with, something small. Maybe if you don't know what to do, you start with a group retreat. There's many online now. People actually doing Zoom retreats, possible. And you learn slowly how to do. I think on my YouTube, in the YouTube channel, there's retreats I've led that I'm guiding meditations. You can pop in and just put those on like that. You can find that through my website, amymiller.com. So, but there's many others of great teachers, highly realized teachers and things. So if you want to reset the priorities, and they were saying to me, and I said, if you find that the meditation is working better for you now, then you want to make more time in your life for it. It makes sense, right? And then I said to them, and you really have to question, how much do you want freedom? I'm talking capital F, freedom. How much do you want to really, you could be free of all of your suffering, mental and physical, permanently free. But we don't kind of have a relationship with that. And we're also very used to our suffering. And everybody suffers like this. So you kind of get into this complacency, and that's where laziness and procrastination come from, and not pushing the reset button. You're afraid to change up the routine, right? Because the optical delusion of consciousness becomes kind of a safe space. And I buy into it because everyone else is buying into it, like that. So be skillful, because I just see the influences, whether you're looking at social media, whether you get your news from your computer or your phone, and then ads pop up. Okay. They leave an imprint in your consciousness. All those ads. Yes, they do. They leave an imprint in your consciousness. The same way, if you take out the middle length Lam Rim book to read that, or Insight into Emptiness, or the Lam Rim Chenmo, or Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, if you bring those out and you read a paragraph, that leaves an imprint in your consciousness. And usually after you read a Dharma book and you read something like that, generally people feel a bit better, especially when they're reading with concentration and they're awake to read. What happens for a lot of people now, we're so dull and distracted. You pick up the Dharma book and it doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles and lights going off, right? And you read a paragraph and you find yourself rereading the same line over and over, rereading the same line over and over, and you close the book. And you go, I'm kind of, let me back to my phone, right? How many people are going through that? So if you really can sit down and set a schedule, because a lot of you are home during the day, you have some space without commuting. Some of you are retired, and set a schedule so there's maybe an hour a day to read. And then you suddenly start having an imprint of reading. That's your reading time. That's your reading time. And that's when I'm going to get the book out. It's better to have a schedule to know it if you're not a natural reader. If you read normally, then no problem. No problem. And I know some people that have habits. If they're sitting eating a meal, some of you live alone. If they're sitting eating a meal, I'm just curious, how many of you live alone? Just put your hand up. Okay, we've got a few people, some of the ones I can see. When you live alone, when you eat, do you have any other activity you do when you eat? I'm just curious. What do you do, Mary?
I'm usually reading.
Usually
I'm either
reading.
I read. Yes, I'm always reading when I'm eating.
Okay. I'm also a reader when I eat. I'm also a reader. I'm always immediately, as soon as even before I get the plate out, I'm like, okay, what am I going to read? Like what's there? Like that. What else do you do? If anybody cares to say, when you're eating alone. You can be honest.
Listen
Beth,
to music.
listen to music. Uh-huh. Nice. Beth, what do
I
you?
am very I am very guilty of wanting to pretend like I am in a completely other place. So I try to do documentaries about different countries. I call it poor people travel. But then I really try to think about, at the same time, I have all this comfort and I'm seeing people who have nothing, ironically, from my fancy little phone. And then I try to think of like how great this is, any little thing that I have.
Right. So some people are listening to music, eating can be pleasant in the background, and then some people are watching stuff on their phones when they're eating, or a tablet when they're eating. So again, be skillful of what's coming in. Be skillful of what's coming in, because it all leaves an imprint. So there's some valuable things to watch, valuable movies or documentaries, but just be careful. And it's nice. I remember it was interesting when the last retreat I did at Laudo, which I think now has been a couple of years ago, last solo retreat at Laudo after the pilgrimage I was leading. When I was eating, I was reading, and I was reading all this Dharma stuff, obviously. And then I realized without retreat, I was reading novels and other things. And then I thought, that's a lot of time. Like I could get through another Dharma book while I'm eating. It's a different level of concentration on the Dharma book, but sometimes I could read scads of, it was no problem to concentrate like that. So I had to kind of balance thinking, because that's one of my escapes, is reading novels. Now I've gone into, fortunately, nonfiction. I've gotten into nonfiction a little bit better, but it's not necessarily a Dharma book, but hopefully, usually the books are helpful, like a book on self-compassion or some other things as well. And so it's something to think about. Like I do have these Dharma books waiting. They're in the queue, in the line. So, let me, and now right now with retreat, that's one of the things I'm going to balance is I have this little pile of Dharma books that I'm going to try to read this month. Like that's going to be a focus in the break times like that. So just think about those influences when you are, what is coming in to your mind like that. Wait, I will make some time for questions. I just want to go through a little bit more here. And here's some, just again, some ingredients and about how we can work not only with our mindfulness, we talked about shared humanity and loving kindness, how we fold that into a self-compassion practice again. And a quote from John Kabat-Zinn that I like, and he's kind of the father of the mindfulness movement in the States. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. So that's what we're doing with our mind, is the ever-flowing thoughts are there. So I'm not going to get down on myself because sometimes I'm in a meditation and I don't think I'm concentrating that well. It's just my mind that particular moment. But the more I apply myself in a certain type of meditation, practice again, it's a rehearsal, then the better able I am to focus in that meditation. I'm training my mind again. I'm learning to surf. There are the waves. Wow, this is a really big one. You have a big emotional upset. Okay, a little firmer on the surfboard. I've got this. I can do this. Okay, and now you're on the other side of the wave. It's possible. What happens is a lot of us have been trained from a young age to basically be toppled by the ups and downs of life. You may be around people that get overly emotional. You see their reaction. We have a whole world reacting like that. Look what happened January 6th in the Capitol, right, in Washington. So you see a whole world overreacting. And some people, for a long time, you feel like that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. Like I've noticed sometimes when somebody passes away, could be an old person, right? But somebody passes away and a phone call comes, and I've been sometimes with friends or family members when the phone call comes, and then you hear they died, and sometimes there's somebody in the room that'll go, like there's a response like that. But what if it's just like, wow, there isn't this, you know, this hysteria about it. It's just like death comes and death is going to happen, but there's less of that huger wave that I have to get over. It's kind of like, oh, wow, and it can be shocking, but there's different ways I've seen different people deal with it. But it relates to everything in life, right? My dear mom, who was great, no problem, but she had what was called a short, I forget, like a short emotional trigger with certain things, like a nervousness of certain things. It was just a habit that she had. Maybe she got it from my grandmother, I'm not sure. And so as a kid, when I was in the car with her, I remember several occasions, she's driving. We're just driving along, nothing, every pleasant, no problem. And all of a sudden she'd go, oh! Like there'd be this hysterical, and I'd look at her and I go, what? And she's like, I forgot to get the milk. Like, is it an emergency? But, I remember being so shaken up of like raised that way so my determination was I wasn't going to be that way. Because I didn't like it, it freaked me out. And I'd say to her, why is it an emergency? It was a habit she had. It was a habit. I mean, it was funny. We used to joke about it as well. So again, think about the surf. How are you surfing? How are you managing the waves when they come? You're feeling pretty calm, spacious, peaceful, enjoying the ride? We can enjoy the ride, even with the ups and downs, because the ups and downs are not so toppling. So what happens is mindfulness opposes an over-identification, losing yourself in emotional reactivity. It's kind of non-attached awareness is mindfulness, non-attached awareness. Okay. And here's a little scale. Kristen Neff, I want to bring this in, self-compassion scale, which is really nice she has. Okay. Self-compassion scale. Let's think about this. And using all those three components I mentioned, mindfulness, common shared humanity, and loving kindness. Okay. Here's loving kindness. I want to apply loving kindness right now. Okay. Says to me, I'm tolerant of my own flaws and inadequacies. I'm tolerant of my own flaws and inadequacies. When I see aspects of myself I don't like, I don't get down on myself. You know, it's the opposite of when I see the inadequacies and aspects of myself I don't like, a lot of people get down on themselves. This is the opposite of that. Okay, when I see these aspects, I don't get down on myself. I'm tolerant of my own flaws and inadequacies. It doesn't mean you're not working on them, but I'm tolerant. Like I understand, I accept. Here it is with shared humanity, looking at shared humanity. When I feel inadequate in some way, I try to remind myself the feelings of inadequacy are shared by most people on the planet. So what normally, let's say loneliness, isolation does, which a lot of people are right now, there's a lot of lonely people isolated. And this is what this says. This is the opposite of using self-compassion with shared humanity. Some people say when I'm feeling down and I feel isolated, lonely, a little bit depressed, I tend to feel that most other people are much happier than I am. Really? You think so? So it's something, I'm putting myself down again rather than, well, I'm really struggling right now, really struggling like that. And wow, there must be so many other people feel this way. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I may be living alone, my own experience, feeling detached like that, but just consider all these other people on the planet in the same thing. We're all in the same boat right now. We're always in the same boat. Human being boat, that's what it's called. Now here's using mindfulness. When I'm feeling down, I try to approach my feelings with curiosity and openness. I mentioned that before. Okay. I love that one. Something is off with me. Something's not, a little bit something. And then I'm kind of like, so what's going on? Rather than when I'm feeling down, I ruminate. I tend to obsess, fixate on everything that's wrong. Over and over I go in that tilt-a-whirl. In the amusement parks, remember the tilt-a-whirl? One of my favorite rides. Okay. Over and over. After a while, it gets boring to keep going. But curiosity and openness, what's this telling me? What's happened right now? One example I have right now going on for me is I'm starting retreat tomorrow, and I'm pretty firm about that. And I will be off the internet and no more emails, and everything's finishing tonight. But I just finished this 3-month thing with this group in Israel, and the 3-day retreat was pretty rigorous because there's a 7-hour time change. So I was getting up at 4:15 to join them for a couple days. It was like 7 hours with minimal breaks, like pretty long leadings, meditations and discussion and some talks. And it was great. I really enjoyed. I love leading retreats, and it was great. But I just noticed this evening, suddenly I waltzed into like I'm exhausted. Like I just suddenly was like, whoa, my goodness, am I tired? So tomorrow, normally retreat, I get up very early. I won't be, getting up at 5 a.m. I'm going to allow myself, because I need, in order to meditate better, I need to be rested. So I'm going to allow myself the morning, the snow day. It's going to be a snow day, and just really everything's pretty much ready and making sure everything's ready. I'm going to start with some light sessions in the morning, very slowly. And I know I'll feel more rested, better, and then the retreat's going to go better. Self-compassion, self-compassion. Kind of learn who you are. Learn who you are. We talked about last week of learning to be your own best friend, learning to be friends with your mind. It's okay. It's fine. So whatever's coming, I'm not normally before years ago, I would grind myself in retreat. No, you're starting. Get up at 5. Get up at 4:30 so you're ready at 5. Don't, and I'd just be pushing. I used to do like that. So the retreat would happen and all that, but sometimes I'd get lung, like a wind imbalance. And I don't think the sessions would work as well. So again, relax, because then meditation comes organically. It arises. The nature of your mind will just arise once you're rested and ready. Even though I have the focus on what I'm doing, I know what I'm doing. You know, longer sessions of meditation, more with my practice, the things I want to lengthen those sessions because I'm not going to be online, not going to be returning emails and things like that, or messages. We can do like that. Any questions so far? Any questions about the exercise or anything? The meditation?
Is it appropriate to ask a question about emptiness? Or, or were you looking for more specific to what you just said?
Sorry, is there a question?
Is it the right time to ask a question about emptiness?
There's a great question, but I can barely hear you. Can you go closer to your microphone?
Sorry.
Well, there
I'm
you
sorry.
go. Great.
That's better.
That's great.
Okay. Is this the right time to, I have a quick question about emptiness, but if that's not germane to sort of where you're taking the class, I don't want to take you off track.
Well, let's see if it's okay with people, but let's see. What's your question? Please, Chase. Yeah.
Um, I hear you talking about, you had given the advice to study emptiness. And at the same time, when I think of the Lam Rim, I think of a graduated path where emptiness is sort of further along, and I'm just trying to square that.
Sure. You mean in relation to some of the other topics?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So just to orient this of how does it fit in, and right now, obviously, these sessions have been more directed. I was asked to talk about self-compassion. So that's great. You know, that this is just one, this, in some ways you might say, this isn't traditionally Tibetan Buddhism, but I actually feel like it really supports our practice, especially as Westerners, because we really lack self-compassion. Many of us so lack that we don't really, you know, we have a rough ride with things, and we don't realize that we have to also take care of ourselves. I think Tibetans understand it more in many ways. They're gentler with themselves. So as far as emptiness, the nature of reality, the very profound idea in Buddhism, it does come later in the Lam Rim. And the reason is you want to have a good foundation. But what you do want to understand is the Buddha gave 84,000 discourses over the course of his life, over like 80 years. And, or certainly when he started teaching, when he was like in his late 20s. So all of those discourses were designed to get you to realize emptiness. That's how important it is. Now you might say, but some of the discourses don't relate to it at all, you know, and there's Theravadan tradition versus the Mahayana tradition. But basically all of it is to lead you along to orienting your mind with the correct view of reality. But the thing is, so it's really helpful to start at the beginning of the Lam Rim and do effective analytical meditations on those topics so that you're prepared. But along the side, you could read some of the parts on emptiness, you know, a little bit on the side until you're at that point when you can devote a little bit more time for it. And then if you can, it's helpful. The more you're a practitioner, the longer you go along, is to spend more time with that as much as you can. So for some of you, just to know, and some of you I know are newer, no problem at all. You may not know what emptiness means, that's fine, doesn't matter. Right now is what's helpful for some of you that have connected with the teacher, and some of you may have connected with the teacher like Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So if you're on a Buddhist path and you're really interested in finding out what's going to be the biggest help for my life, and I want my practices, I want to know, because a lot of people ask me and go, should I be doing this? Should I focus on concentration? Should I think about death and impermanence? Or, you know, develop that. So certainly I advise of the way I was trained from Rinpoche. And but the other thing is some people email and get their life practice from Rinpoche. Okay. And you would get pages emailed to you whether you've met Rinpoche or not. That's what highly realized people can do. And Rinpoche will map out something he has checked specifically for you. I'm not kidding. Because I have many times students bring me their practices, they email and say, can you help me, guide me with this? Absolutely. So Rinpoche, what he'll do is divide up the lamrim of what you should be meditating on, how many months, how many time, what to concentrate on. We're all different. He might give you preliminary practices to do, like offering 100,000 water bowls or reciting 30,000 of this or that. Now, granted, it means you're prioritizing your spiritual practice, that you want that, but you're getting it from the source, from a highly realized being. So there's no more guesswork of, should I be doing this? I don't know. I went to that practice, and then it's great. And you just basically spend the remainder of your life slowly working on those practices. Like that, you chip away. Is that helpful?
Thank you. Really helpful.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, let me go on a little bit more and then we can come to some more questions as well. Here we go. I want to talk a little bit about the self-esteem game. The self-esteem game. We have these words, self-esteem, different than self-compassion. Really different than self-compassion. Self-esteem is important as well. Okay. If anything, high self-esteem appears to be the consequence, okay, rather than the cause of healthy behavior. It's kind of a result of healthy behavior. At its core, self-esteem, though, this is the trick. It's an evaluation. It's often an evaluation of our worthiness. Don't you think so? A judgment. We're good, we're valuable people. Like this. So I think it's key to kind of understand that. Like self-esteem, meaning it stems not only from our own self-judgments, but the perceived judgments of others. Like, and highlight that the word perceived judgments of others. People see us based on their perspective of us. It's not the whole story. Unless you're a Buddha, you have a limited perspective. Okay. So, and research shows that self-esteem is more strongly influenced by the perceived judgments of strangers than close friends and family. It's amazing, right? People that you don't really know that well and what we care about them. I was just thinking of, teenagers in school with that brutal period of middle school, 7th grade, my God, right? And how, like, girls that in school, there they are, there's students standing in the hall. You don't really know them very well, but boy, are we influenced by their judgments. And then we become adults. Changes a bit, but I still see that going. When I enter a large retreat, some retreats with Rinpoche, there could be 200 to 400 people there. And you see the little cliques. Dharma groups have cliques. You probably noticed that at Tupta Norvaling. Just the nature of, so even with strangers, I'm going to take their view of me more seriously than the people that are closest to me. It's so interesting. Okay. So think about it again, right? Like if your mother tells you how smart and attractive you are, you're like, that's my mother. What does she know? So you tend to give more weight to the nameless, faceless beings, coworkers and neighbors and things like that. So again, the big hole in this kind of reasoning is the thread on which we're hanging. Our self-esteem is so thin. So thin. Given you're giving it, people don't even know us very well. How can they make well-informed judgments about us? Why are we so swayed by their opinions? How well do we really know their opinions in the first place? How well reasoned are their opinions anyway? So it is true that high self-esteem has one important, well, not so important, but a tangible benefit can be happiness. When you like yourself, you tend to be happier, cheerful. When you don't like yourself, you're depressed. So the mood states that color our feelings about our lives, these are just these moods that we go through. When we believe we're great, we're on top of the world, life's great. When you don't think you're great and one person looks at you across the room in some offhand way, and suddenly we ruminate and interpret that. Something's wrong with me. What did I do? What happened? I was just standing outside the door to enter the party, feeling really excited to be here. I enter the room, I look across the room at this person, an acquaintance I know that I'd like to connect with, I perceive as attractive. They look over at me and they see me, but they're in a conversation with someone. They see me, but they don't wave or smile or anything, and they go right back into the conversation. Why is it? What's wrong with me? What did I do? A minute ago, you were fine. So I think the self-compassion would notice that. Self-esteem gets hooked in it. Something's wrong with me. The self-compassion would notice, huh, okay, I just noticed that I want them to acknowledge me in a pleasant way. I'm giving this person some power over me. Okay, wait a minute. There I am on the surfboard. Wait a minute. Here comes the wave. I'm going to ride this one really well, which is, I so wanted to come to this party, got dressed up. I think I look really nice. I'm really excited. They're talking to somebody. Maybe they're kind of in an intense conversation, and I'll just find them later, find out what's going on. If they don't want to talk to me, I'm okay because there's this whole room full of people to talk to. That's your self-compassion, balanced mind state. Balanced mind state, but amazing power we give over some people. And then you ruin your entire evening. Something you were looking forward to the whole night is ruined like that. Something to think about. And just a little bit less in closing, and I'll see if there's any more, again, any more questions as well. We can take some questions. But I just want to check in with you. Doesn't that make sense? Isn't it interesting about the self-esteem trip? Sometimes based on a little bit competitive nature. And, so it's helpful to have healthy self-esteem, but without the self-compassion, I think the bottom falls out. I think the bottom falls out. And that is that self-esteem game that we play. I'm really okay, but then you notice suddenly you're not okay. With self-compassion, I can still be okay. Still be okay there. Even though the person looked over and didn't acknowledge me and didn't smile, and I can ruminate and start a whole trip, or I can enjoy myself this evening with all the other beings in the room. That. So let's just in closing a little bit, there's so many other juicy things I wanted to talk about. I want to look a little bit at procrastination, because nobody's had that issue in the pandemic, right? Nobody's susceptible to that, I'm sure. Okay, procrastination. How about self-compassion and procrastination? You procrastinate for different reasons. Sometimes we just don't want to do something unpleasant. Okay. Sometimes we procrastinate because we're afraid of failing. Self-compassion really helps you deal with so procrastination's less of a hindrance. Let's just review for a moment in your mind an unpleasant task. Okay, you put it off, you put it off, you put it off. Doing your taxes, cleaning the oven, writing up the incredible boring notes or the thing you have to write for the thing, organizing the schedule. Okay. And even if the chore isn't particularly unpleasant, you're folding and putting away your laundry. Okay. Whatever it is. But you have this normal thing. I want to relax. I want to avoid, I don't really feel like doing that now. It's going to be there to do. Okay. It's not really a big problem putting off certain tasks unless it causes a lot more stress in your life. So that's something to evaluate. And so there's really chronic procrastinators that cause a great deal of stress in their lives and the lives of the people they live with or people they're working with, like that. So if you find that you're habitually procrastinating when you're faced with doing things you don't want, okay, go into the emotion underlying the resistance. Can you go in there a little bit? And this would be in a deeper reflection. You avoid thinking about unwanted tasks. There's some discomfort in there for you. So you want to see what's underneath. And this is a way you can use your mindfulness. You know, what am I feeling when I go into that particular thing? I have to write up the notes for something. So what's the deal there? What is really going on? Is I don't feel like I'm organized in my mind about it. I don't really want to do this project. Just look at the underlying emotion. Another way is give yourself compassion for the human reactions of avoidance and displeasure. So another second way is just give myself some compassion. Like if somebody else was avoiding and you see and they're like, I hate doing that thing, you'd have compassion for them. I know it's really nasty to do that. I hear you. Okay. You can also allow yourself to fully dive into the sensation of the dread, the lethargy. Like sometimes we just need to be mired in it for a while to go, all right, there's really nothing there. There's really nothing there other than a habit. So can you feel the motions in your body? This exercise you can do, holding them again in a non-judgmental, mindful awareness. Just noting that. I recognize these are moments of suffering, even on a small scale. All of my emotions are worthy of being felt and validated. And sometimes once you give yourself that sense of comfort, you're a lot less resistant to getting started. You can check up. Like that. Here's the second part, fear of failure. I procrastinate because fear of failure. So sometimes the underlying emotions are deeper than just it's unpleasant, okay? And if the task is very important, you're starting a new business, new work project, often there's just so many tasks to get it started. You want it to already be in the ease mode, but there's gonna be a lot of work first that you have to get through. And then the fear comes up. Am I going to be able to do it? The unworthiness rises, the head rears of that. So am I going to blow it? Because every new venture is going to have mistakes. Every successful person went through that in starting a new venture. Many mistakes. That's just normal. It's natural. That's how you make a better business. That's how you do it better. But sometimes you get overwhelmed. And then sometimes you have your unconscious sabotaging, layering in everything else you're going to do because I can't really face it. I can't really do it. So if the pattern's habitual, it can certainly limit the extent that you reach your full potential. Okay. And if you think it's due to fear of failure, let's look at that. Okay. Human condition, everybody fails at something. Everybody makes mistakes. So this is our kind of shared humanity you bring in. Okay. And every failure, if you've got the right perspective, is an incredibly powerful learning opportunity. I know you've heard that before, but it really is. It really is. Sometimes my best falling flat on my face, like the most painful, the most, I can't believe this happened to me, right? So powerful for me, the lesson. Brilliant, positive lesson that I came out of it. Stronger. In fact, I don't think I would have gotten the message and been as strong had I never gone through that failure. Seriously. So I'm not as afraid of failure anymore. I'm kind of like, okay, I'm dipped my toe in and I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to give it my best shot. That I know. If you give it your best shot, okay? So promise yourself in this exercise, you can take time to think about this later. Promise yourself if you do fail, this is the promise you make to yourself. You'll be kind, gentle, understanding with yourself, rather than the one who beats you up, the harsh self-critic. Again, promise you, it's a promise you make to yourself. You make promises to other people. Yeah, I'll be good. Well, that's great. I will say that to you. This is to yourself, to be kind, gentle, and understanding. Okay? Comfort the scared little child inside of you who's afraid to venture into the dark unknown. You're assuring him, her, them, you'll be there to provide support along the way. I'm here for you. We say that to other people. What about ourselves? Okay. And see if you can take the plunge. Get started on the activity. Okay. We all know that from the experience, the worst part of dealing with the procrastination is the starting, is getting started. Once you get started, like I know tomorrow, my first session, I'm going to be a little bit like, it's going to feel, I'm a little bit more in meditation, a little bit sitting in a different place. I set up a new altar, whatever. There's going to be a little bit of unfamiliarity there, right? And I'm just gonna go for it. Maybe I'm not sitting as long as I'm sitting February 20th, but that's because I have more of a habit February 20th. So I'm just going to just do it. I'm just going to start. It doesn't need to be a perfect session. I'm not going to manifest deep samadhi immediately, right? Slowly, slowly, slowly. Make sense? What else? Any other questions before we finish? Any last comments? Beth, please.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say I'm just starting in Buddhism, and already this is helping me very much.
Oh, wonderful. Greg, thank you.
Mhm.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining. Lovely to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beth, did you have a question too?
Sorry about that. The relationship between compassion and renunciation. Can you talk about that from experience?
Compassion and renunciation. What I would say is we have this idea about renunciation. We hear this term in Buddhism. Renunciation is a big term, and a lot of people think it means you're giving something up. What are you giving up? And we associate renunciation, you're giving away your money, you're, simplifying your life. It's not really about stuff. It can be about stuff, but not necessarily. I think renunciation is about having compassion for yourself is the beginning, because what you're really giving up is suffering. And what I mean on the Buddhist path, this is the first of the three principles of the path. It takes us through our whole, so we've got renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. Renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. We build, but you need that. So the lotus flower rises out of the swamp, unstained by the muck of the swamp, is a symbol of renunciation. So when you are sick enough of a negative habit that you have, and you actually in your mind say enough, I can't do this anymore like this. I can't do it anymore like this. That's the beginning of renunciation in your mind. So in a sense, you're having compassion for yourself, realizing I cannot suffer like this anymore. And that's where I think the compassion comes in. Does that answer your question? Okay, let me see. There's a couple chat messages.
Venerable Amy, the question in the chat is, hi, Venerable Amy. Helpful distinction that self-esteem is partly dependent on others' perception of us. Is it logical then that our self-esteem might increase during lockdown since we're not interacting as much with other people?
I mean, I think it could, but I think to some degree it kind of, I put it this way, I notice for myself, it's in the background more. It's in the background a little bit more. And I think there's been more self-compassion rising up in the pandemic for me, because right now I'm living alone and the self-esteem sometimes can bounce off of other people. Now, there are a lot of Zoom teachings I'm doing. There are a lot of Zoom teachings. And I know recently this course I was teaching, it was to two different groups of people in this psychoanalytical institute, something, but one of the groups, I don't know, there were like 25, 30 people and maybe some more at certain times, but they were extremely non-responsive. And I know it affected my self-esteem. So it wasn't that I felt like I was teaching poorly. I didn't go into that. My self-compassion was there, knowing I'm doing what I normally do. I prepared, but without the responses, I was kind of like losing energy at times, you know, so I think that affected my self-esteem in that way. So I think it's different, Claire, for different people, of how much you're interacting with others and how you can carry yourself on your own in your space. I have noticed sometimes some really healthy self-esteem for myself because I'm comfortable to be on my own. You know, I've done a lot of retreats, so I'm comfortable. I don't feel lonely ever. I really don't get into loneliness much. I can empathize for people that are lonely, but I feel like, yeah, I've got enough of a healthy self-esteem that feel like I'm doing work I value, that I enjoy. It seems to help people. So that can contribute to the self-esteem as well. But I don't know if it's necessarily less or more. I don't know what other people think about that. Any comments on that in your own personal experience? If anybody cares to comment? Okay. So I know we are out of time, and I know these were just really nice, short little chance for us to be together and work on a little bit. We can certainly go on. I think, thank you to Mary posted of some other courses I'm going to be doing in the future. So some of them are a series. One of them is a weekend. Feel free to jump in there through into June. Starts in March to June. And so that way we can get together again. And I hope it'll be helpful. And I hope this has been helpful for you. Again, it's been very short. So I'd like to dedicate whatever merit we've created from these sessions, and really my gratitude to the Marys and to Norberling and Charmaine for running the center and all the people involved. And that can we dedicate to COVID being eliminated from the planet as quickly as possible, and for all those who are ill from COVID to be healed instantly, and all the people that have been affected and anyone who's died recently to take a precious human rebirth quickly to get out of their suffering and become enlightened to benefit all. And may this help your own practices to help you reach your potential like that, so we can be of the most benefit like that to all living beings. And I'd like to also dedicate to the long lives of our precious teachers, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And if you're aware, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is teaching, hosted by FPMT. He teaches a lot on, you can go to any of the teachings online. You can watch them on YouTube. You can watch recordings of them. But he teaches on the morning of, I think February 8th, is it? Or February 9th?
It might be our evening, Venerable Amy.
But it's evening for us. That's what I meant. So it's in India in the morning, and it
At
comes
9
out.
a.m.
Your
in
time,
India.
it's going to be roughly, it must be your time around 8:30 or 9 at night.
8:30,
On
yes.
February 7th is when the teaching is, your evening. So go onto his website. You can find out. That one's hosted by FPMT. So that'll be that we can join for that. And it's so sweet. There's a few of us there's like 50 people that were picked to be on the screen. You know, His Holiness, I've been watching these teachings, and whatever group hosts, they get some representatives to be on the TV screens in front of His Holiness. And so I'm going to be on one of the little blocks. And I'm kind of curious because I've watched His Holiness's teachings, seen some friends of mine on the screen, which has been delightful when they did the teaching in India. And so I don't really know with the cameras and stuff, will it be like His Holiness is looking at us? Because that would be pretty exciting. So that'll be nice, but anybody can tune in and watch. And there's English translation and translation into many other languages. So it'll be a really nice teaching, I think, on emptiness is what the teaching's on. So don't miss it. Anyway, all these teachings with His Holiness are great. Like that. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, Venerable Amy. Thank
And
you on
I
behalf
think
of
there's
Teaching Norberling.
I think there's another comment. Let me just make sure I have all the comments. Oh, that's sweet. There's before we tune out, I just want to make sure if I answered everything. Yeah. So contentedness for some of us, okay, in the pandemic, some people are having a really good ride, I have to tell you. Some people are really enjoying. These are the fortunate ones. I would include myself in that, meaning people that have a good living space, food, shelter, clothing, heat, hot water, good internet, Wi-Fi, and they're able to work at home and support themselves, hopefully doing something valuable and worthwhile. I think those people are doing the best in the pandemic. And it's very fortunate. So let's use our time then, if we have that situation, in a very positive, meaningful way. Thank you so much.